Hey guys! With the new Jumpstart servers, I wanted to make an updated video comparing the 3 support classes in Lost Ark, Bard, Paladin, and Artist, because a lot has changed since launch. I'm going to explain the pros and cons of each support in Lost Ark, along with a general overview of their playstyles so that you can make an informed decision on which one would be a good fit for you. And if this helps you out, please like and subscribe. I also stream daily on Twitch, so catch me there for some live support content. Links in the description. Alright, let's get right into it. Bard, Artist, and Paladin are the 3 support characters in Lost Ark, and they're all viable for endgame content. There isn't one support that completely outshines the others, so pay close attention to the gameplay and aesthetics that you prefer. The first support we'll look at is Paladin. Paladin is one of the most well-rounded supports with the highest healing output, moderate shielding capabilities, high stagger, and high damage reduction. He is the easiest support to play and also has the most range of the 3 supports, so he fits into most team compositions with ease. Paladin has 2 24-meter damage buffs, called Heavenly Blessings and Wrath of God, that he alternates to keep permanent damage buffs up on his teammates. He also permanently runs a very strong ranged damage reduction and shielding skill called God Sent Law that negates 70% of incoming damage for teammates standing in the circle. Paladin is also the only support who doesn't run heavy armor as an engraving in his build, so he's able to slot in another support engraving and has more build variety. Paladin also has 2 healing abilities. The other supports only have 1, which is his main shielding skill, Holy Protection, and his identity skill, Blessed Aura. Holy Protection is an incredibly strong skill that serves 3 purposes. It's primarily a 24-meter shielding skill, it has a built-in cleanse, which is really important for endgame content, and a small heal. Blessed Aura is Paladin's identity skill, and unlike Bard and Artist, who we'll talk about in a minute, his identity skill also does 3 things at once. It gives a 10% damage buff, it has a strong heal over time, and it gives 20% damage reduction to everyone standing in the very large circular AoE. The other 2 supports must choose to either damage buff or heal with their identity skill, while Paladin does both at once. This is one of the main reasons, aside from his long range, that he is the easiest support to pick up and play. Now, I'll briefly go over the cons of playing Pally. Paladin naturally has very long cooldowns, which means that he needs decent gems and a lot more swiftness to have good uptime. And even with gems and swiftness, Paladin's cooldowns are still pretty long, which means his shield uptime will be lower than the other supports, although his damage reduction capabilities are still great. Paladin also has a lot of downtime when his Blessed Aura is active. Unlike with Bard and Artist, who can start building meter as soon as they use their identity, Pally needs to wait until his Blessed Aura depletes to start building meter again, which can make his playstyle feel a bit slower. Paladin also has almost no push immunity on his skills compared to the other supports who have a lot, which means his positioning needs to be better or he can get tossed around. This shouldn't really be an issue though, as he has the most range, but it's something to keep in mind. And the final con for Paladin is that his ultimate ability, Alathane's Judgment, needs to actually hit the boss in order to give you identity meter, whereas Bard and Artist can use their ultimates without doing damage and still gain meter. This can really impact his gameplay if you miss, because you don't get a free Blessed Aura for more uptime. There are a few more minor pros and cons to Paladin, but for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to Artist now. Artist is a fast-paced support with very good healing output, great shielding, moderate stagger, and low to mid damage reduction. She is in the middle of the pack in terms of difficulty to play, and she's a close to mid-range supporter. She has a higher learning curve than Paladin, but not as high as Bard. And I would honestly recommend either Paladin or Artist for newer players unless you're looking for more of a challenge. Since Artist is a close to mid-range support, she plays really well with melee team compositions and can struggle to keep up with shielding on very ranged teammates. That being said, in her base kit, she has 1 24-meter range damage buff called Sun Sketch and 1 circular AoE damage buff called Sunwell. She's actually the only support that gives up to 30% flat mana for teammates hit by Sunwell, compared to the mana regen that Bard and Paladin give. This works very well for mana-hungry teammates. Unlike Pally, Artist has a 3-bubble identity skill that is very straightforward to use. You can use 1 bubble for Sunrise, which gives a 10-meter flat heal to your surrounding teammates when you drop a moat, and then another flat heal when a teammate picks up the moat. This is great because you can AoE heal the party by dropping the moat, while also have a single target heal for those who pick it up. You can have up to 3 moats on the ground at once that last 1 minute each. There's a little timer on them. Artist can also choose to use 2 identity bubbles for her Moonfall damage buff. which, like Paladin, provides a 10% buff to all teammates in a 24-meter range, although it doesn't give damage reduction. Artist's identity skill gives her a lot of versatility between healing and buffing, and she also builds meter extremely quickly with her kit once she becomes more geared up. Artist shields also have very low cooldowns, so you're able to maintain high shielding uptime with this class, letting your teammates greed a lot of damage. She's also the only support who has a stackable on-demand cleanse with Door of Illusion. This skill can teleport allies, give them shields when they take the portal, and provide a 7-meter AoE cleanse when you initially put it down, and you can use it 2 times. It also gives a ton of passive meter generation. Artist also has a lot of push immune skills and flex skills, including her main damage buff, Sunsketch, which means she can safely stand closer to the boss without getting knocked around. With that, let's go over the cons of Artist. Because her shields need to be used on the boss, Hopper, for example, is one of her main shielding and meter building skills, she doesn't do as well with ranged party members. And on top of that, unlike Paladin and Bard, Artist has a lot less damage reduction unless she's slotting in flex skills like Starry Night or using the robust protection tripod on Sunsketch, which I don't really recommend. This means learning to aim her shields while also building meter is very important and is one of the hardest parts of playing Artist. Artist's main damage reduction ability, Starry Night, also isn't as strong as Paladin's or Bard's. And it's also very melee, meaning you need to walk up to teammates and stand right next to them for them to receive it. Artist also requires a lot of swiftness and better gems to feel fluid, as her attack animations can feel slow and clunky early on. And with that, let's move on to the last support, Bard. Bard is a mid-range support with moderate healing ability, very good shielding, good stagger, and moderate damage reduction. Bard is the hardest support to play with the highest damage buff ceiling, and fits into most team compositions due to her mid-range playstyle. Bard has the highest learning curve of the 3 supports due to her more complex identity skill management, and like Artist, has a very fast-paced playstyle. In her base kit, she has one 24-meter damage buff called Heavenly Tune, and one circular AoE damage buff called Sonic Vibration that teammates need to stand in. She is also the only support that has a permanent shielding / damage reduction buff that has 100% uptime, which is called Guardian Tune. This buff provides 30% damage reduction for teammates, and when it expires, it provides shields, meaning teammates are always either being shielded or given damage reduction at any given time. It can also be slotted to have a tripod called Wind of Protection, which will block an oncoming debuff for teammates, which is very strong in certain raids. Bard, like Artist, has a 3-bar identity skill that fills up as she uses skills. Her healing identity skill, Serenade of Salvation, which is a large AoE heal that burst heals at the end, is scaled based on how many bars of identity she has. Unlike Artist, who only uses 1 bubble to heal, Bard can do a 1-bar, 2-bar, or 3-bar heal depending on how many bars are filled up at the time of use. It's ideal to only use a 1-bar heal and save the 2 and 3 bars for damage buffing teammates. A 2-bar damage buff gives a 10% damage buff, similar to both Artist and Paladin, but a 3-bar damage buff gives a 15% buff. And Bard is the only support who can provide this massive buff. And like the other supports, Bard also uses swiftness as her main stat. However, she is the only support out of the 3 capable of running a specialization build, since her base cooldowns are very low and spec scales good with her 15% identity buff. Although for newbies and most team compositions, I still highly recommend running a swiftness build. And now onto the cons for Bard. Although Bard has a lot of push immunity, similar to Artist, she has a mid to close range playstyle due to various skills. This means you'll be running up to the boss to hit skills like Prelude of Storm and Wind of Music, and then backing up to debuff and give other utility. This isn't exactly a strong con, but it does take some getting used to the positioning. Bard's identity skill can feel very punishing because it requires a lot of fight knowledge and micromanaging to use it properly. For instance, you don't want to use a 3-bar heal because it's overhealing, and you don't want to use a 3-bar damage boost if there isn't enough time to make use of it before a boss phases. So timing and managing allies' health are very important skills to learn when playing Bard. Bard also has very high mana costs, so without engravings like max MP, you'll find yourself needing mana food frequently in more drawn out fights. For this reason as well, she also needs to run Conviction Judgment runes at all times to help manage it. The most major con for Bard, however, is unlike the other 2 supports, she doesn't have a dedicated cleansing skill, meaning in Legion raid fights like a Khan, which requires a lot of cleansing, she needs to rely heavily on items like sacred charms and sacred bombs, and her teammates as well for cleanses. I hope this information helps you guys narrow down which support you'd like to play, as they're all great and have their respective strengths and weaknesses. I put timestamps throughout the video if you want to go back and look between each one. Feel free to ask me any other questions you might have on Twitch. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.